competing against women in elite sport. The biologically male body is bigger, stronger, and faster than the female physiology. And we've only recently been cowed into pretending otherwise because of a noisy minority of radical wokies. But long before this debate became toxic and, in my view, frankly insane, there was a far more jovial contest over the sporting supremacy of the genders. It was called the Battle of the Sexes, with female tennis superstars taking on men in big televised exhibitions.
Aryna Sabalenka just stepped straight into the Piers Morgan buzzsaw and said trans athletes shouldn't compete against women. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right? Wrong. What followed turned into a debate that's got everyone, from Twitter warriors to locker room legends, taking sides. This isn't just tennis anymore. It's about biology, fairness, and who actually gets to call the shots. Before we dive into this full-on mess, let me ask you, where do you stand on this debate? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I promise you half of you will be on opposite sides of the other half. And honestly, that's exactly where it gets interesting.
Men she could beat. And I think she said she wouldn't beat anyone in the top 800. I think she said something like that. When you look at the men's game and you look at, say, the top 1,000 players, how many do you think you could beat? I mean, at what level would you fancy your chances against a man in say, a three-set competition?
Well, to be honest, I think if we play like full court, full rules, yeah, it will be really tough for me to compete against guys. I mean, physically they're much stronger. Speed, power of the balls, everything is much stronger. So it's tough to compete. But in these conditions, I feel like we're having right now here, like 9% smaller court. I feel like, okay, maybe at least I have a bit like higher chance to compete and to see like if I can win.
So here's the deal. Aryna Sabalenka, world number 1 and 4-time Grand Slam champion, sat down with Piers Morgan to promote her upcoming Battle of the Sexes match against Nick Kyrgios. Should have been a normal promo interview, right? Talk about the match, toss in some playful banter, maybe highlight her recent wins. But Piers being Piers, he couldn't resist dropping the grenade question about transgender athletes competing in women's tennis.
Let's raise the whole question again of this ongoing debate about trans athletes in women's sport, because obviously it highlights the physical disparity between men and women. Martina Navratilova, a former number 1, obviously like yourself, says it's wrong for the Women's Tennis Association to allow trans women to compete in its events. Do you agree with her?
Well, that's a tricky question. I have nothing to do against them, but I feel like they still got huge advantage over the woman. And I think it's just not fair to a woman to basically face like the biologically man. And then it's, it's not fair. Like the woman been working the whole life to reach her limit. And then she has to face like a man, like which biologically much stronger. So for me, I don't agree with this kind of stuff in sport.
And Sabalenka, she didn't sidestep it. She looked straight into the camera and said what a lot of athletes are thinking, but won't say out loud. I have nothing against them, but I feel like they still have a huge advantage over women. It's not fair for women to compete against basically biological men. Now, before you start typing a storm in the comments, let's break down what actually went down and why this is sparking a full-blown meltdown online. First off, Sabalenka isn't some random player throwing shade. She's the reigning world number 1. She's won Australian Opens. She's beaten the best players on the planet. When someone at that level talks about competitive fairness, you can't just brush it off as ignorance or bigotry. She's literally living in a world where these policies would directly impact her career, her earnings, and her legacy.
If you're honest,
like a regular
Aryna,
match against the guy.
There's obviously a physical advantage for men, but if you're honest, do you think you would beat would you beat any man in the top 1,000 men, do you think? Under normal conditions?
For sure.
I think some of them, maybe I would be able to win, yeah. like if there's the guy that doesn't have that powerful serve, for example, and yeah, I think I could get a couple wins, but not like I would win every.
But here's where it gets really spicy. Piers Morgan, the guy who built his career poking bears with sticks, brought up Martina Navratilova's previous comments on the same issue. For those who don't know, Navratilova is an 18-time Grand Slam singles champion and a gay rights trailblazer. She's been incredibly outspoken about keeping transgender women out of women's sports. So now you've got one LGBTQ icon saying trans women shouldn't compete, and people's heads are literally exploding trying to process that.
Because I completely concur with what Aryna just said.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, to be honest. Yeah, I've got nothing to add, but I think she hit the nail on the head there.
Nick Kyrgios, who was also part of the interview, jumped in and fully backed Sabalenka. He said she nailed it. And honestly, that's a pretty big deal because Kyrgios isn't exactly known for holding back his opinions. The guy's been fined more times than most people have had hot meals. So when he agrees without hesitation, you know this isn't just Sabalenka going rogue. Now, let's get into the policy itself because this is where it gets technical and messy. The WTA Tour Gender Participation Policy currently allows transgender women to compete if they've identified as female for at least 4 years, maintain testosterone levels below 2.5 nanomoles per liter for the last 2 years, and agree to regular testing. The WTA medical manager can also adjust these rules on a case-by-case basis. On paper, that sounds reasonable, right? Requirements, testing, oversight, all seem fair. But here's the issue that Sabalenka and others are pointing out. Testosterone levels don't erase the advantages gained from male puberty. We're talking bone density, muscle mass, lung capacity, heart size, physical advantages that don't just vanish when testosterone is lowered. And before anyone jumps in accusing me of being transphobic, let's get real. Biology exists. Acknowledging that males and females have different physical capacities on average isn't discrimination. That's literally why sports have separate categories. If biology didn't matter, there'd just be one division, men and women competing together. But we don't do that because everyone knows what would happen. The top 100 male tennis players would dominate the top 100 female players. That's not sexism, it's just reality. Serena Williams, arguably the greatest female player ever, has said she'd rank around 700 if she played on the men's tour. 700! And she has more Grand Slams than most people have had breakfasts. So when Sabalenka says it's unfair for women who've trained their whole lives to reach their limits to then compete against someone who is biologically male, she's not being hateful. She's pointing out a fairness issue. She's saying, this woman has been training since she was 5, maximizing every ounce of her female physiology, and now she has to face someone with the benefits of male puberty. How is that equitable? And here's where Piers Morgan actually showed restraint. Shocking, I know. He didn't grandstand, didn't lecture, just asked the question, let Sabalenka speak, and moved on. For Piers, that's basically a Nobel Prize in self-control. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. There haven't actually been transgender players competing at the top professional level recently. The WTA policy exists, but it hasn't been fully tested on the elite tour. Some say, why even talk about this? It's a non-issue. Except it's not, because policies exist, and other sports are already facing this situation. Swimmers like Leah Thomas went from ranking in the hundreds as male athletes to winning NCAA championships as women. Weightlifters, runners, and cyclists have all encountered the same dilemma. Tennis might not have seen it yet, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't discuss it beforehand. Historically, it's fascinating. Back in the 70s, Renee Richards, a transgender tennis player, competed on the WTA Tour from 1977 to 1981. Richards transitioned after eye surgery and fought for the right to compete. She eventually did, and later coached Martina Navratilova, the same Navratilova now arguing against transgender women competing in women's sports. The irony? not lost on anyone. But here's the thing. Sports science has evolved dramatically since the 70s. We understand human physiology and the lasting effects of male puberty much better now. What seemed reasonable in 1977 might not hold up under modern scrutiny. Billie Jean King, another tennis legend and LGBTQ advocate, sees excluding transgender women as discrimination. She's on the opposite side from Navratilova, her contemporary and fellow LGBTQ icon. So even within the community most affected by these policies, there's massive disagreement. In 2024, the Lawn Tennis Association updated its rules, barring transgender women from competing in national and interclub female competitions in the UK. They reviewed the evidence and made a call. Other sports federations have done the same, banning anyone who went through male puberty from elite female categories. And that's where the real battle is happening, because transgender advocacy groups see this as discrimination, plain and simple. Critics of transgender inclusion argue that excluding transgender athletes denies them their identity and their right to compete. And look, I get that. Nobody wants to be shut out from something they love. But the counterpoint, what Sabalenka is essentially saying, is that allowing transgender women into women's sports can be discrimination against biological women. You're asking women to compete in a category meant to account for biological differences, but then letting in someone with male physiological advantages. It's discrimination either way, so which do we tolerate more? Critics of transgender inclusion point to undeniable advantages: greater muscle mass, bone density, bigger hearts and lungs, different hip angles, all developed during male puberty and not fully reversed by hormone therapy. Sports is one of the few areas where biology really matters because outcomes are measured in milliseconds and millimeters. Now, let's talk about the fallout after Sabalenka's comments. The internet, unsurprisingly, lost its mind. One side praised her for speaking the truth. The other side called her transphobic and demanded apologies. People even dug through her past interviews to push their own narrative. But here's the thing. Sabalenka wasn't being inflammatory. She said she has nothing against transgender people. She just thinks the competitive advantage is unfair. That's as diplomatic as you can be on this hot-button topic.
The interview also touched on another spicy moment. Marta Kostyuk, ranked around 26th in the world, claimed she was at a disadvantage against players like Sabalenka because of higher testosterone levels. Essentially, she was saying natural advantages made competition unfair. Sabalenka's response? All I hear here is just excuses. And honestly, she's right. Kostyuk is trying to blame testosterone for losing to better players, like saying LeBron James only dominates because he's tall. Yeah, he's tall, but he's also insanely skilled, works hard, and has off-the-charts basketball IQ. Here's the key distinction. Biological variations exist within a category. Some women are taller, stronger, faster. That's sports. That's competition. But male biology in the female category? That's a different story. It's a different category altogether. That's why we have separate men's and women's divisions. And let's be real, the federations making these rules are in a no-win situation. Allow transgender women? Accused of being unfair to women. Don't allow them? Accused of discrimination and transphobia. Some try to thread the needle with testosterone limits, but lowering testosterone doesn't undo 15-plus years of male puberty advantages. The irony of the battle of the sexes angle is rich. Sabalenka is promoting an exhibition match against Nick Kyrgios, a male player. Even he's not at the top of the men's game, and he'll likely beat her if he takes it moderately seriously. It's not a knock on her. She's phenomenal. It's just biology. History proves it too. Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs in 1973, but he was 55 and long retired. Serena lost to Karsten Brash, ranked around 300 in men's tennis. Exhibitions keep showing the same point. Male and female athletes operate differently physically. So where does that leave us? Sabalenka spoke her mind. Nick Kyrgios agrees. Martina Navratilova has said the same for years. Billie Jean King and others argue that exclusion is wrong. The WTA hasn't commented yet. They're probably huddled somewhere trying not to upset half their fans. Good luck with that. The conversation isn't going away. More athletes are speaking up. More federations are changing rules. More research is happening. And more people realize this isn't a simple issue with easy answers. Sabalenka isn't a villain. She's an athlete defending the integrity of her sport and her category. Agree with her or not, she's raising real questions about fairness, biology, and competitive equity. And Piers Morgan, he just sat back and watched the fireworks. For once, he didn't have to create controversy. He just asked the question and let Sabalenka do the rest. That's where we're at. Sabalenka spoke. The internet exploded. Opinions aren't changing anytime soon. This debate is just getting started, and trust me, we'll be talking about it for years. If this breakdown got you thinking, smash that like button and subscribe. We're covering all the sports drama you won't see anywhere else.